Jeff, this is Kim.
Hi, Jeff.
I'm Jeff. Make sure you don't send anybody's reserves.
That's what I'm saying.
We don't have reserves.
We're taking somebody's seat.
And you can pull those cushions and pillows wherever you want, except that they stick to the views humid. I think that's all the rules are, but pretty much you churches. Anyway, I was thinking, well, I don't know, I just got this brainstorm. You know, when Ray Michael passed away, his family gave us a very healthy donation. And of course, it's in our treasury, we haven't really done anything. We put a plaque together, something really nice, because even if we transfer or move to Colorado, whatever, we can take it with us. Put that on the agenda for discussion. And I don't know why I didn't think of it earlier, but I think we tucked it away and thought, okay, we'll do something, and we never did. But I think a really nice plaque or something of his years of service, a nice one, not a trophy, stick on engraved. You know, you want to talk, just trophy, stick on engraved. Laser cut into a thin piece of alloy, something cast, you know, but yet is reasonable cost.
And that would be.
I will wait.
I thought Chas Paul would be good. Well, I know they were going last week, but they would be good.
We're still Dolly's feeling all right.
Me too. She doesn't travel, but
Margaret doesn't make it every Sunday anyway.
No.
And
Lou, we haven't seen him in a while.
Lou's here once in a while, and Chaz is there once in a while. They're usually there because the kids are.
Yes.
Yeah, Kenny's usually here,
Almost always.
unless there's something going on with
It's the other you there.
yes, he did, yeah, he did say that.
Well, Mike and I both said we should have something put together today when I was thinking. He doesn't say.
The spoken presentation, I think, goes real well.
I think, yeah.
Well, good Sunday. Good next Sunday.
And if somebody can talk Margaret into playing, I mean,
Yeah.
we can make sure that she doesn't show up on Facebook.
And you know, we can make that food into sort of a bagpipe thing. So the bag on the very end of the flute would be the fabric would be germicidal fabric impregnated with some high-tech material, impede the sound, and she would play the bag flutophone.
But she's playing in Dayton, isn't she?
Yeah.
I think so.
She is, yeah, and you can't wear a mask when you're playing a wind instrument or a brass instrument.
But I think she has some concerns about spreading germs, but I don't see that would be the case with our density of attendance.
I think it's more she doesn't want to be on Facebook for some reason. She doesn't.
Oh, okay, never thought
She may
that.
have a.
And yet, she was so funny, she remembered that there was no bad feedback from her when we posted her beautiful artwork on.
Well, I think it's more. She may have, still water runs deep. She may have a past that we don't know about.
Yeah.
She doesn't want revealed.
Yes.
She may have escaped from somewhere under a cloud.
She doesn't want to figure out that old Soviet
Yes.
top level official.
It's time.
All right. Welcome to First Universalist Church of New Madison on this rainy, it was getting pretty dry out there, day of summer. Hot and sultry, but nothing we can't put up with, so the fans are running. Do we have any announcements?
Wanted to announce, just remind everyone,
that our church board meeting is on Tuesday evening, and it'll be a conference call, and I will be sending out agendas to everyone with the call-in number. However, anyone that wants to attend that listens here or through the congregation, just give me a call. I'll give them the access to our conference call. It shouldn't last a long time, but we need that board meeting just to review some financial information, some other things to prepare for next Sunday. Next Sunday following the service, we'll have our annual meeting of the congregation, and that is required by our bylaws, and we certainly want to keep everyone informed. So please, if you hear this, we put it on UU updates. Please come. It'll be not a really lengthy meeting, but we do need to re-elect officers, and just a few look over our financial budget, approve it for the following year.
Okay, so board meeting, 7 o'clock Tuesday. It's a conference call. You don't have to be on the board. If you'd like to be on the board, there's plenty of openings, so please volunteer, but you don't have to be to join in the conference call. And you can listen and not talk, or if you have a question or a comment, you're more than welcome to do that. So contact Mike or the website or Facebook for the number of the conference call, and please join us if you would like. And that is in preparation for the annual meeting, which will be the next Sunday, and that will be right after church. And there's donuts as always, donuts, iced tea, and coffee and lemonade, so you won't miss anything to sate your thirst and your hunger while you wait. We want to welcome Lisa and Jeff, Roberta's kids here. We've seen Lisa before. I don't think I have not seen Jeff before. It's been a while since he's been back. I'm glad that he's back safe in the United States, and we appreciate his service wherever he goes, and hope he stays safe in all those places, because some of them are not the best place in the world. So. Any other announcements? Okay, our prelude. Yes.
I just want to recognize my mother's birthday today.
Oh, yeah. Nobody said.
Wonderful.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And
86 years young.
and you wouldn't think she was a day over 70.
No, but I'm just asking my children.
And we appreciate immensely your musical abilities and sharing with us. That music makes church. And also your floral contributions. Beautiful rose again. Evidently from the neighbor's house, but we're not going to say anything about that. All right, our prelude is Shall We Gather at the River? Shall we gather at the river, which if it keeps on raining like this, could be right outside our door? Our service today is concerning basically musings on democracy. I am kind of like, if you've seen the movie Up, I am kind of like the dog from the dirigible squirrel. I get distracted easily, so this is going to be kind of all over the place, nothing that you really have to follow. But as usual, our slideshow will kind of follow along with it. This is a democracy, act like it. We are having some questions about democracy, whether we're even going to be able to keep it. I know that seems like doom and gloom, but it's something I think we need to be aware of, so it's something we'll look into today. All right, chalice lighting. Communion of Heart and Soul by Bruce Southworth. For the gift of this day and for our community of spiritual nature and compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. May our many sparks meet and merge in the communion of heart and soul. Our opening hymn is 134, Our World is One World. Very hard to sing, but has profound words. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call. Goes right along with what we are talking about today, the split, the difference between rich and poor. All right, affirmation is 466 in your hymnal if you want to follow along. Let religion be to us life and joy. Let it be a voice of renewing challenge to the best we have and may be. Let it be a call to generous action. Let religion be to us a dissatisfaction with things that are, which bids us serve more eagerly the true and the right. Let it be the sorrow that opens for us the way of sympathy, understanding, and service to suffering humanity. Let religion be to us the wonder and lure of that which is only partly known and understood. An eye that glories in nature's majesty and beauty, and a heart that rejoices in deeds of kindness and of courage. Let religion be to us security and serenity, because of its truth and its beauty, because of the enduring worth and power of the loyalties which it engenders. Let it be to us hope and purpose, and discovering of the opportunities to express our best through daily tasks. Religion, uniting us with all that is admirable in human beings everywhere. Holding before our eyes a prospect of a better life for humankind, which each may help to make actual. Vincent Suleiman. Very nice. It kind of puts into words what we think about as Unitarian Universalists. Okay, our children's story. This is kind of hard to get a picture of, but you can see the rabbit in the cloth. How many of you remember the Velveteen Rabbit from when you were kids? You have to be pretty old to remember the Velveteen Rabbit. Yes, you remember it, and I remember it. But it was my grandmother, who was probably in her 70s or 80s, who read it to me when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I don't think I've ever read it anyplace else. But it is, I just ran across the story looking for a children's story for today, and it kind of touched me, so that's what we're going to do. The Velveteen Rabbit. It's a bedtime English story for kids. A soft and fluffy velveteen rabbit lived in a toy box in a boy's room. Each day the boy opened the toy box and picked up the Velveteen Rabbit, and the Velveteen Rabbit was happy. Then newer, brighter toys came into the toy box. They had special tricks. Some could move when the boy pushed a button. Others bounced high. The Velveteen Rabbit had no special tricks or buttons. No wonder the boy started to choose those other new toys. At night, when the toys were all back in the toy box, the other toys talked with pride about the fine things they could do. Velveteen Rabbit was quiet. There was not much to say. Only one other toy in the toy box was like the Velveteen Rabbit. Cowboy Horse was a soft, fluffy toy, but he was old. Most of his hair was worn away. He had only one eye left. Cowboy Horse said to the Velveteen Rabbit, "Soft toys like us are really the lucky ones. We get loved the most. And when soft toys get loved and loved, we can become real." "What is real?" said the Velveteen Rabbit. "Being real is the best," said the Skin Horse. "You can move when you want to move, and when you are real, if you are loved, you can show your love back." One day, Nana, who took care of the boy, threw open the lid of the toy box. She said in a busy tone, "Oh dear, that walking doggie is missing. Now I must find something else for the boy." In a second, Velveteen Rabbit was plopped down on the bed with the boy. This began another happy time for the Velveteen Rabbit. Each night the boy would hold the Velveteen Rabbit close in his arms. In the morning the boy would show the Velveteen Rabbit how to make rabbit holes under the sheets. If the boy went outside for a picnic or to the park, Velveteen Rabbit would come with him too. After a while, the hugging and holding, much of the Velveteen Rabbit's fur got matted down. Its pink nose grew less pink with all the boy's kisses. But the Velveteen Rabbit did not care. It was happy. One day the boy became sick. His forehead got very hot. The doctor came and went. Nana walked back and forth in fear. Day after day the boy stayed in bed. There was nothing the Velveteen Rabbit could do but stay in bed too, day after day. Then at last the boy got better. Such joy in the house. The doctor said the boy must go to the shore. How wonderful, thought the Velveteen Rabbit. Many times the boy had talked happily about the shore and told of its white sands and big blue ocean. What about this old bunny? Nana asked the doctor. That old thing, said the doctor, it's full of scarlet fever germs. Does that tell you when this was? Scarlet fever. For those of you who don't believe in vaccinations, you may meet scarlet fever again. Burn it at once. Get him a new bunny. So the Velveteen Rabbit was thrown into a sack along with the boy's bed sheets and old clothes and a lot of junk. The sack was carried into the backyard. The gardener was told to burn the whole thing, but the gardener was too busy with picking the beans and peas before nightfall, so he left the sack behind. I will take care of it tomorrow, he said. The sack was not tied at the top, and the Velveteen Rabbit fell out. The next day, when the gardener picked up the sack to take it away to be burned, the Velveteen Rabbit was not in it. And that's how germs and viruses spread, because of lack of care that people are supposed to be doing these things. Then it started to rain. Velveteen Rabbit was sad, so far away from the boy, never again to be nice and cozy together, and now soaking wet. A tear fell from the Velveteen Rabbit's eye over his cheek. It plopped onto the grass. All at once, at the spot where the tear fell, a flower grew up. Then the bud of the flower opened, a tiny fairy. Little rabbit, said the fairy, do you know who I am? I wish I did, said the Velveteen Rabbit. I am the fairy that takes care of toys that are well loved, said the fairy. By then, Velveteen Rabbit was shabby and gray. The boy had loved off all of his whiskers. The pink lining in the ears had long turned to gray. Its brown spots, once fresh and bright, were now faded and hard to see. It is time now for me to make you real, said the fairy. I think I remember real, said the Velveteen Rabbit. Now what was it Cowboy Horse had said? Ah, yes. When you are real, you can move when you want. If you are loved, you can love back. With one touch of the fairy's wand, the Velveteen Rabbit felt different, tickly. All of a sudden, each one of its two legs sewn together tight could move. A fly landed on the Velveteen Rabbit's head, and it was itchy. As quick as a wink, that foot was up at the Velveteen Rabbit's head to scratch it off. So this is being real. I can move when I want to move. I will show you some new friends, said the fairy. And the fairy took Velveteen Rabbit to where several rabbits ran and hopped about. Soon they were all great friends. Time went by. The boy was back from the shore. He was all better now. One day the boy went into the backyard to play. From the trees nearby, a few rabbits hopped out. One rabbit was brown all over, and another one was all white. A third rabbit had brown spots, most of them faded. That one hopped closest to the boy. The boy thought, why, this rabbit looks just like my old bunny that was lost when I was sick. I love that bunny. What he didn't know was that this was his very own bunny. Come back to see the boy, for he was the reason the Velveteen Rabbit had become real. The Velveteen Rabbit, the story of love. And if only we had fairies today that could grant our wishes. All right. Joys and concerns. We'll start as usual with the Ukraine, and our sunflowers are the national flower of Ukraine, which is why we have sunflowers here. We don't talk about this every week, but this interminable war is continuing. It's turning into not much of a war like they used to have wars. Now it's turned into a long, prolonged season wear the other person out. Russia is bombing cities that have no military value, bombing places that have no military value, trying to break the will of the Ukrainian people, and so far that is unsuccessful. So we pray for their continued strength, and we pray for a resolution to this conflict. Anything else? All right, I would like to have a candle for the 9-year-old Ohio girl who had to have an abortion, and another candle for the doctor in Indianapolis who performed this service. Question? Okay. Who performed this service and is receiving death threats. She used to go to Peru, which is in northern Indiana City or South Bend, to a clinic there. She finally had to quit going because of the death threats that she was receiving. This is what we will be talking about a little bit later as far as what is a democracy, what is respect for your fellow citizens, and what is respect for other people's views. And I probably think we need to light the candle for Omicron B5, the latest variant, which is spreading radically, which most people don't realize. If you go anywhere in Dark County, the only person you'll see wearing a mask would be me. If you go to Kroger, Walmart, Tractor Supply, and Mike. And there are a few, I'm not saying there's nobody, but it's a very tiny percentage. Greene County and Montgomery County are both now in the red zone for the number of new infections they're receiving. That means it will not be long before it will be here. And you see people all the time say, it's over with, I'm done, I'm tired of doing that. That also bears into our conversation on democracy. How do you continue a democracy with a population that is either uneducated or refuses to be educated? And one more. Curly, my pacer, has been in a donor pasture all summer. He needs his pasture back for his cattle, so I've got to bring Curly home today. I thought I was ready, but I'm not sure that I am. Curly is about 14 hands tall. He is a very strong racer, and my fences are not the best, so I'll probably be standing out there watching Curly for the next 14, 15 hours until it gets dark, and then I'll be putting him in his stall for the night. So a candle for Curly that he minds his P's and Q's and doesn't cause me a lot of trouble. All right, and one candle for those thoughts, prayers, concerns, and joys which we've not talked about, which you may hold deep in your heart, and any of you watching. If you have a need, please let us know. We are here to help in whatever way we can. All right. There is a new book out called The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity. History has kind of taught us that the adoption of agriculture brought hierarchy, rulers, priests, artisans, soldiers, and made the rest of us into serfs. That transition from hunter-gatherer in small bands where each individual had autonomy to being a cog in the machinery of civilization was limited access. With the civilization is a limited access autobahn with little or no choice to exit. This may not be true according to this book. We started out with hunter-gatherer, where everyone, it was more or less a small tribe, and everyone had a say in what went on. You may have a prominent elder, and some were matriarchal, some were actual female. When the common understanding is when agriculture started, we started to have surpluses, then we started to have private property, or people began to claim ownership of property. People began to claim ownership of wealth. Inequality started. The people with wealth paid other people to be soldiers, for instance, who did nothing but protect and fight and gain more ground, more property for the owner. They became artisans who built things like pyramids, but also built all kinds of useful utensils and artistic objects. They became farmers, specialized in farmers. They raised livestock or they raised crops. And then you had the average person who filled in was the labor for all of these places. Was the common foot soldier, was the person who turned the wheel to spin the pots, was the person who carried the animal dung out to the field and spread it. That became the great majority of the population. They had no say, they did what they were told, and they were done with because they were told to be done with. One example that I came across in this book, and that's the one we'll talk about for a little bit first, when Cortez invaded and went against the Aztecs, he only had 500 men, 16 horses, and a big leveling agent, gunpowder. This was not enough to would not have been enough to defeat the Aztec nation, which was huge and controlled the middle America, or around the Mexican Peninsula, Mexico City, and almost down to Guatemala and Nicaragua. Except Cortez found allies in the surrounding tribes that the Aztecs had controlled. These were people who had no voice in the Aztec Empire. They were merely serfs, or the people who supplied the food, the labor, and the sacrifices, the human sacrifices the Aztecs needed. So one of these tribes was, I hope I can pronounce the name, Texacabal. Let's just pass on the name. It turns out, and the reason we know this is there were historians or priests with Cortez who wrote down almost everything that went on, and many of these have been found in the archives in Mexico and in Spain. One of the stories they related was this village and this group of this particular tribe had a council where everyone spoke equally. Should we join Cortez or should we stay with the Aztecs? They presented ideas and arguments for each one, and then at the end of the meeting, they voted which way to go, and the majority vote won. They voted to go with Cortez, and because he promised them their freedom and promised them release from the foot on the neck of the Aztecs. So they supplied 1,000 warriors with Cortez's 500, plus his horses, plus his gunpowder. This was enough to cow the Aztecs into surrender. They tried to bargain with Cortez, and if you know your history at all, you know that failed. The Aztec leader Montezuma was killed. We don't exactly know whether the Spanish did it or whether his own people did it. This is not recorded exactly because of the uprising. But unfortunately, what happened in the end was this tribe who voted to work with Cortez as an ally was turned into a tribe of serfs or prisoners again, the same situation they had been in before. They traded one domineering foe for another domineering foe. And the Spaniards stayed in control of Mexico for hundreds of years. The important thing I want to bring up was this was a Mesoamerican democracy at a time way before America had been founded, before anybody really talked about democracy. A time when people considered indigenous peoples unable to have a civilization, unable to be democratic, unable to consider each other as individuals. They were considered savages. According to the writings of these historians, that is the farthest thing from the truth, and something that has not been talked about much in history as it has been relayed to us currently. All right. And what we're finding is history is repeating itself. And the way I connect that is union workers voting for a conservative party. In the last two elections, almost 40% of union workers voted for the Conservative Party. A conservative party that is totally against unions, that votes for right-to-work laws, that votes for the ability to fire someone without cause. In other words, you don't even have to have a reason to fire someone. They can be fired for any reason that the boss decides to fire them. We can go on and on about the reasons, the things that happened that are anti-union, and yet I cannot explain, and that's what I'm asking you to think about, and also looking for any kind of explanation as to why people vote against their own, why do they move against their own best interest. Another example is white workers without a college degree. 35% voted for the Conservative Party. 35%. This is the party that cuts welfare payments, that cuts Social Security payments, that cuts unemployment payments, that shortens the time you can be unemployment, that makes life difficult for the basically blue-collar worker in every aspect of their lives, and yet these people vote for this conservative party. Another one is Latin Americans, Hispanics. There's a large percentage of Latin Americans, and they are basically, if you look at Latin America now, even Mexico, there is a tremendous conservative bent, and that possibly, my guess would be religious. Sometimes the most religious people are the most conservative, barring Unitarian Universalists, of course. And maybe that is the reason for them to vote for a party that strips away their legal rights, that calls them rapists and killers and murderers, tries to keep them from coming over the border. These same people, and this has happened in history over and over and over again, when a party or when a group of people starts out and they are the underdogs and everyone is against them, as they gain power and become more numerous and learn how to work the levers of power, and we can do with the Italians, the Irish immigrants, the Asian immigrants, as they take over their areas, even some of the black communities that elect black mayors and city councils, they turn against themselves. They turn against other people in the same position they are in. My understanding of human nature would be if you suffered, you would want to help other people who suffer. There's a big argument whether people are normally good or normally evil. It depends on whether you're Lutheran, Presbyterian, Catholic, what your particular religion is, whether you believe in predestination. But there are philosophers which will debate that people are basically good and people are basically evil. There are signs on both sides. If you watch the news every night, there's always a story of uplifting goodness at the end, someone helping someone. Last night it was a person in England. He turned out to be a match for a blood donor, and then that became a stem cell donation for an American firefighter who saved this firefighter's life from New York. And so they invited this family from England to come over, and it was quite a reunion and quite a sharing across the sea of one person helping another person. And yet we can see the examples on the other direction all the time, where people treat other people inhumanely. All right, even black voters, 25% of black voters voted for the Conservative Party, a party which makes no bones about its racism, makes no question, no reaches out only in spoken words. You can see some of the people who do that are doing it for personal gain. I don't know if you've probably run across Diamond and Silk. They're prominently featured in much of the conservative airwaves. Two black ladies which are very pro-conservative, but they are making a good living off of their conservatism. Kind of like the goat leading the sheep, that would be my alliteration. Latinos, we talked about those. So what is it that stimulates these people to do this? What is it that stimulates someone to vote against their own best interest? One estimation is cultural anger. These people, particularly the white, uneducated or non-college graduate white people of laboring and blue collar, are losing their positions in life faster and faster. Automation is coming up, jobs are changing, jobs are being shipped overseas. As a side note, the people shipping the jobs overseas are the members and the movers and the shakers in the Conservative Party these people are voting for, which once again doesn't make any sense. But none of this makes any sense, so that's why we're looking at it. So anyway, cultural anger. These people, the one common denominator, if you look at any of the advertising, any of the things that go on, any of the propaganda that's put out, if you watch Tucker Carlson, which I cannot, but I read reviews of what he says, it's all built around anger about we are being taken advantage of, we are losing this, we are losing that. It's being taken from us by fill in the blank. Somebody from another country, we'll use China for an example. Let's put a bunch of tariffs on China. Let's punish them for the things that they are sending to us because we don't make them ourselves. It is as plain as the nose on your face that the tariffs are not paid by the Chinese. The tariffs are paid by the people who buy the products in the United States. This is a prime example of shooting yourself in the foot and then smiling and trying to dance. I don't understand this at all. These people, and maybe that's part of the uneducated part of it, where they will buy this litany, they will buy this expression of anger, and then not put two and two together and come out with four. The other is racial resentment. Racial resentment has been going on since time immemorial. Everybody has their own tribe. We preach and we teach and we support and we push support and acceptance of anybody, no matter who they are, whether they're gay, black, white, Chinese, anything. As long as they abide by the rules of society, which is being polite and not forcing your opinions on others, then they are accepted in our community and welcomed in our community, and we will help them in any way we can. And yet, a lot of people can't get past this fact that they are different from me, so automatically they are all different from me. And this is another thing that defies explanation. In Darke County, if a black family moves in, they will be helped as individuals. But these same people who are helping them, I've got a black girl that helps me and works for me, and the people who are talking to her and working with her every day and are polite and nice to her are telling racial jokes in front of her. I don't know whether they don't know. It's the only thing I can understand, that they don't know what they're saying, that this insults her, or that they don't care. They know and they don't care, and they think that because she works with them, because she's accepted, she's no longer seen as black anymore. She's seen as one of their friends who just has a tan. So because they go ahead and tell racial jokes to their friends all the time, and because she's their friend, it's astounding. I can't wrap my head around it. And it's hurtful for her, and she's really polite and kind of shy and says nothing about it. But, and I don't know what to do about it. Should I go up and say you can't do that? I mean, maybe I should. That's maybe a failing on my part. They don't do it when I'm there, because I've already told them that, but nobody says that kind of stuff. Nobody swears. Nobody does that kind of stuff in front of me, but I can't. When people come and tell me what they do behind my back, and then some of these people, when you confront them, they'll say, no, I didn't. That's a lie. I didn't do that. That also is typical. It's always someone else's fault, and what they're telling about me that it's bad, it's never true. So, all right, we'll go on to that. Border crossings and record numbers, that's a number I wanted to bring up on immigrants. But the curious thing about that is, by not allowing residency in the U.S. while these asylum seekers are seeking a court date, they are pushed back into Mexico, and then they try again, and they're caught, and they're pushed back into Mexico. And then they try again because they have family here. They have a job here. A lot of them do have jobs here. And I know Mexican immigrants in Darke County that are illegal immigrants and working and getting paid. And some of the employers in Darke County are actually paying the coyotes fees, which can be thousands of dollars, to get them here because they are hard workers. And they're being paid a decent amount of wage. And they're filing their taxes on false Social Security numbers. So when people tell you that they're leeching off the system, that they're collecting welfare, they're not collecting welfare. They can't collect welfare because they don't have a valid Social Security number. They don't have a valid name. They contribute to the system, but that money just disappears into the pot, and they never get it back because they can't lay claim to it. So anyway, the point is, before I turned off there, these people are being caught 5, 6, 7, 8 times at the border. So when you're told that the number of people crossing the border illegally is astronomical, it's the same person coming back and back over. There's really no more people than there used to be. But because they used to be allowed to come here and stay with family until their court date came up and they appealed for their asylum, then they were only counted once. Now they're counted multiple times because they keep trying to get back into the country. So I don't know what to do with that. You try and tell these people that, and they won't believe you. Religious believers who vote conservatives. We talked about the 9-year-old girl, and everybody says she was 10. She was 9 when she was impregnated. She was only 10 when she had the abortion at 6 weeks. So we're talking about a 9-year-old girl, and there are conservative opinions out there that said abortion is not legal. It should not be allowed at any time for any reason. And I think I have. I don't know how well you can see this. It does need to begin to resemble an animal into 13 days. Here's 16 days, 17 days, 18 days. It looks like a fish with a tail. And as soon as it starts to look like an actual maybe, you can possibly say it was an alien or a human. It's 21 days. And at 23 days, it begins to look almost like a little baby. So, with these same religious people who are now have their sight set on contraception, the initial ruling, and Justice Alito assured us that it was limited only to abortion because that was a right of privacy. It turns out all these other things, contraception, gay rights, all these other things are also based on a right of privacy. And some justices and some private citizens, Heritage Foundation, people like that have said that is their next aim. Their next aim is to outlaw contraception. I mean, this is just mind-boggling, and nobody can believe that it's true. But 2 years ago, nobody would have believed you could overturn settled Roe versus Wade, which all the justices during their interviews said was settled law, and settled law is accepted, and it's a law of the land. It turns out that where they may not have been telling us the truth. Okay, so then we get to, I'm going to have to shut this short. Then we get to, well, the last thing I want to mention is this also endangers in vitro fertilization. There are women now, because these embryos, people want to consider as soon as there is a conception, as soon as the zygote is formed, two cells come together, that is considered a human being. I don't know if you saw in the news, the pregnant woman who was arrested in Texas for driving in the multiple car lane. She's contesting that because she said there were two people in the car. The baby that's in my womb is another person, according to the state of Texas. So I should be allowed to drive in the high occupancy lane because there are two people in the car. So anyway, these people are thinking about moving their embryos to safe states. If you have an embryo in a state like Kentucky or Texas or Louisiana, Mississippi, what happens when they fertilize 10 or 12 or 15 embryos and only implant one and have the others frozen? Are those little people who are frozen there and have to be implanted in somebody? What happens when it's time that you decide you don't want those embryos and it's time to discard them? Is that going to be illegal? So as a result, some of these people are moving their embryos to safer states. It's a time of turmoil, a time of unsettlement, a time of who knows what is going on here. All right, I was going to talk a little bit about the Electoral College, and I think I'll probably leave that till later. There are positives and negatives about the Electoral College, and that's where we get into democracy again. That's basically the thrust of this discussion is democracy. American democracy was created by a group of white men, many of whom owned slaves, all of whom owned property, which meant that only 10% of the population in the early 1700s that was at the Constitutional Convention, only 10% of the white men in the colonies owned property. So this entire system was set up by 10% of the population. They were the only ones who were allowed to vote. You had to own property. You had to be a white man. Women could not vote. Women were recognized basically as chattel. If you were from another ethnic origin, you were recognized as a chattel. You were property. You had no vote. That's where the 3/5 thing comes from. So when people tell you we want to hark back to the founders, I get a joke out of the Second Amendment. A musket by a trained military person could fire 4 shots a minute. That's a trained person could get off 4 shots a minute. How many people would be alive today? How many people in Uvalde, Texas would be alive today if that person had to reload after every shot? There would be no comparison. And that's what the founding fathers were talking about when they said everybody needs a weapon. They didn't say everybody needs a machine gun. They said everybody needs a muzzle loader. And I'd be more than happy to give every one of those people a muzzle loader. All right, the last thing I'll throw out, this is just something I ran across, and we'll talk again about the pros and cons of the Electoral College. The last thing I just ran across this morning in the news, Benton, Iowa. You heard that. Their library is closed. Their library is closed because they don't have any staff anymore, because their staff has been threatened and harassed. They had books on Biden and Harris. Kamala Harris visited there, and she gave the library a book that she had written on her history or biography or something. They put it in the library. People are complaining there are not enough books on Donald Trump and too many books on Biden and Harris. Too many books on LGBTQ+, too many books on gay people. there were 4 books that had the word gay somewhere in the book in this library. 178 books that concentrated on the Christian religion in the library. These people demanded that every time a book was purchased that said something about gay, that somebody had to purchase a book about Christian religion. Every time a book was purchased that had something to do with Democrats, a book had to be purchased about Trump. The head librarian, who has since resigned, said, "We can't find books accredited by the American Library Association that are real books that are about Trump, because they're all negative books. The ones that have been written by reporters and everybody else, the books that are positive about Trump are puff pieces paid for by the Republican Party and given away to get on the bestseller list. They give away thousands of these books to donors, and therefore they've sold thousands and thousands of these books. But they aren't sold by people in the population, which brings us back to 40% of the country, the minority of the country, the Electoral College is running the country. So anyway, the library is closed. They're trying to debate what to do to keep the library open. So far, they're loggerheads. The conservative members of the community would go in and borrow the book on Joe Biden, and then they would never bring it back. They would borrow the book on Kamala Harris, and they would never bring it back. Harassment, they would call the library. There was actually one gay librarian who worked there, was harassed. Her house was picketed just because she was gay. This is a small town in Iowa, which used to have a reputation of being a liberal state with forward-leaning ideas. These people most of them are farmers. Farmers are conservative, but they're not, well, they didn't used to be crazy. I don't understand where that's going. So anyway, let's stop there. And we'll pick this up again later. Any comments? No? Okay.
And maybe a future sermon could be how, as UU members or adherents to whatever UU principles we embrace, what's our responsibility of helping, for lack of a better word, those with a micro view to embrace a more macro view of the world itself, and particularly our local communities? What's our role to do that? I mean, we talk amongst ourselves. We've heard stories about talking to family members and finally shutting down, not even broaching the topic anymore because it's so divisive. And yet, at the same time, we're not missionaries, so to speak. But what is our role as members of and embrace UU philosophy in terms of helping others to see that broader view and not resign ourselves that the next election is probably going to be conservative and here we go again? And I don't mean to end my comment. I'm such a pessimist either.
I think we're basically preaching to the choir. You already write letters. People here are active when they can be active. They vote. The church has sponsored a notice with the LGBTQ site in Dark County. We posted the fact that Unitarian Universalist of New Madison is supportive of gay people, and if gay people need anything, they are more than welcome to come here. We do everything public that we can do now. This is what I'm searching for, is what do we do as a minority and still maintain our ethics and our values. Just because what the conservative side does is effective doesn't mean it's something that we should do, and it's important. It's not something that we would ever do. And I don't know, I work with these people. I work with somebody who worked for the post office who had an argument with his supervisor, and I told you this story before, was put on suspension for 2 months. The union got his suspension lifted, got him all of his back pay back again, and he still voted for Trump and hates unions. And I said to his face, what's the deal? How can you possibly, the union saved your job and got you back pay because you were unfairly approached or attacked by your supervisor, who had no real reason, which is the reason that the arbitration people, who are notoriously not friendly to the unions anyway, said that it was totally unfair what the company did to you. And this is the post office. But don't get me started on that. We talked about that before. Now my letter carrier is driving a van that gets 14 miles to the gallon. She put her Prius in the garage that got 55 miles to the gallon because Director LaJoy, I think that's his name, decreed that everybody in the post office has to drive these vans that he's buying. They're gasoline vans, they're not electric vans, they're not combination vans. So he's basically putting his foot into the backside of the post office, raising the rates, making the post office less efficient than it was before. But anyway, so this guy votes in opposition to his own best interest. I just do not understand that. That's what has saved America. And I guess I kind of ended with, we still have hope. Look back into the past. We had America First in the First World War that supported Germany, wanted to keep America out of the war. We overcame that. We had the Asian exclusion thing where nobody from Asia was allowed to emigrate to the United States. We had the anti-Irish, we had the anti-Polish, the anti-Italian. Every immigrant group that has come in has had people against it and tried to force them out. We've had poll tax, we had Jim Crow laws, we've had lynching for hundreds of years. All these things we've overcome them and come not all the way to the end, we're getting better, but we've overcome them, so there's no reason we can't overcome what is going on now. The dangers and the challenges we face can be overcome, and that's where you have to fall back. Are people basically good, or are they basically out for themselves and the devil take the hindmost? And I keep trying to think that they're good, and then I look at my friend who voted against the post office, or Bill voted against the union and saved his job at the post office, and I begin to wonder, and we've talked about this before, I'm going on and on here, they're killing education. Critical thinking is important to an educated populace. What is the big drive? To make kids stupid. The people who threw rocks at the black kids trying to enter the school in Little Rock, the people that threw rocks at those kids are trying to keep their kids and their grandkids from hearing and learning that they threw rocks at those little black kids. That won't be published in any of the history books because these people want to keep it out of the history book. If you don't know your history, you don't know what you have and what you've lost and what you're losing. Okay, I gotta shut up here. Okay, our offering. There is a long, long trail. It's the music we're gonna hear. Feel free to put something in or take something out if you need it. Peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land by every tongue, please. Our closing hymn is 123, Spirit of Life. come to me, please. And if you notice, almost all of our hymns, they list and they lift up the reason for religion, the reason we have faith, the reason we create community, and the reason we want to support community. All right, Extinguishing the Chalice is a world attained by Borrow Dunham. And now, since the struggle deepens, since evil abides and good does not yet prosper, let us gather what strength we have, what confidence and valor that our small victories may end in triumph, and the world awaited be a world attained. All right, our last picture, you probably recognize Yosemite. It's a place I go to even in pictures for a place of calm, a place of serenity, a place of hope. Even Yellowstone has reopened after the tremendous floods they had there. The North Park and the South Park opened immediately. The north side opened again. Some of the ruins will take years to wash back there, to build back in again. But they are crowded and crowded with people who want to see America as it can be. A symbol of what America can be is free and beautiful and shared with everyone. All right, speaking of sharing with everyone, there's coffee cake and the donuts from last week. Eat them today or they go to the dog. Our postlude is In the Good Old Summertime. Happy birthday, Roberta!
Thank you.
That closes our service in Madison Unitarian Universalist Church. Hope you have a good week. If you need something, let us know. Please wear your mask, even if people look at you funny. This is getting dangerous again. My wife from New Carlisle, somebody from their church got the BA5 and actually died 3 days later. So this is real. It's not something that people are making up. Okay.